There is something you have been doing that is making everything you want move further away. Not because you are doing it wrong, because you are doing it too hard. And the harder you push, the more the thing recedes. You have felt this, the relationship you wanted so badly that your need for it became the reason it didn't work. The opportunity you pursued so intensely that the pursuit itself signaled something that pushed it away. The financial situation you have been trying to force into existence for so long that the forcing has become its own kind of obstacle. This is not bad luck, it is a law, and Robert Collier documented it in 1926 with a precision that explains every time you have ever worked hard towards something and watched it slip further from reach. Stay with me, because what comes next is going to reframe not just how you manifest, but how you relate to everything you want. You have probably heard some version of this idea before. Let go and it will come. Stop chasing and it will appear. Release attachment and the universe delivers. And you have probably found those phrases frustrating, because they sound like instructions to do nothing, like passive waiting dressed up as wisdom. That is not what Collier documented. He was not teaching passivity. He was teaching something much more precise and much more useful. He was teaching the difference between the kind of effort that produces results and the kind that prevents them. And the difference has nothing to do with how much you do. It has everything to do with the state from which you are doing it. The source I am drawing from today, Collier's original work, is in the description. Free, but stay, because the mechanism is what changes everything. Here is what Collier documented about forcing. When you force something, when you push toward it from a place of urgency, of need, of I must have this, you are broadcasting a specific signal. That signal is not the desire for the thing, it is the anxiety of not having it. And those are completely different broadcasts. Desire is expansive. It reaches towards something it expects to receive. Anxiety is contracting. It reaches towards something it fears it will not get. And the external reality, which responds to the broadcast, not the intention, receives the anxiety, not the desire, and returns more of what the anxiety is broadcasting, which is the experience of not having. This is why forcing feels like pushing against resistance. Because it is. You are pushing against your own broadcast. The harder you push, the louder the signal of not having becomes. And the louder that signal, the more the external reality organizes itself to reflect it. Collier wrote that the man who chases his desire is declaring, through the act of chasing, that the desire is not yet his. And that declaration, not the chasing itself, but the interior state it reveals, is what the mechanism responds to. Not the effort, the state underneath the effort. And the state underneath forcing is almost always some form of I don't have this yet, and I'm not sure I ever will. That is the real broadcast. And that is what keeps the thing away. If this is landing, hit the like. It tells me this is reaching the right people. Now stay. Because the second part is the one nobody explains correctly. Here is what releasing control actually means. Because this is the part most people get wrong. They hear release control, and they interpret it as stop caring, stop wanting, pretend it doesn't matter, and they try to manufacture indifference, to perform not caring about something they deeply care about. And the performance is hollow. The subconscious knows the difference between genuine release and performed indifference, and it broadcasts accordingly. Collier was precise about this. He said releasing control is not releasing the desire. It is releasing the belief that you have to force the mechanism to deliver it. Those are completely different things. The desire stays. The grip on the how and the when, that is what releases. The distinction matters, because performed indifference produces nothing. Genuine release of the grip on the mechanism produces everything, because what was blocking the delivery was never the desire. It was the forcing. It was the signal of anxiety underneath the effort. And when that signal quiets, when the grip on the how releases, the broadcast changes. From I don't have this, and I'm afraid I never will, to this is mine, and I can afford to let it arrive in its own way. And the external reality, which responds faithfully to whatever it receives, begins to reflect the new signal. Leave a word below if this is naming something you have been living with. Just one word. I want to know what this is reaching. Here is where Collier's documentation becomes most precise. He described what he called the two modes of wanting. The first mode he called wanting from lack. This is the most common one. It is the experience of desire that carries within it the awareness of absence. The wanting that is inseparable from the feeling of not yet having. This mode produces intense effort because the absence feels urgent, and the urgency produces forcing, and forcing produces the signal that perpetuates the absence. It is a loop, and most people live inside it their entire lives without ever identifying what is running it. The second mode Collier called wanting from ownership. This is the experience of desire that carries within it a settled sense of inevitability, not certainty about how or when, certainty about whether. The kind of wanting that feels more like recognition than pursuit, like moving towards something that already belongs to you, rather than chasing something that might escape. This mode produces action too, but the action feels different. It is deliberate rather than desperate. It is moved by clarity rather than anxiety, and it produces a completely different broadcast, one that the external reality can respond to with delivery rather than delay. The difference between these two modes is not in the intensity of the desire. It is in the interior state from which the desire is being held, and that interior state is the broadcast. That is what determines what comes back. If this channel is showing you the original principles before they were simplified, subscribe. Every few days we go deeper into what was documented 100 years ago. Now here is the practical question. How do you move from wanting from lack to wanting from ownership when the lack is real, when the account is actually low, when the relationship actually hasn't arrived, when the circumstances are genuinely not what you want them to be? This is where most teaching on subject fails. It says feel abundant even when you're not. Feel loved even when you're alone. Feel successful even when the results aren't there. And the instruction is sound in principle but useless in practice because it doesn't explain how. Collier's answer was not to pretend the circumstances are different. It was to change the relationship to the circumstances, not what you see, how you see it. Specifically, he documented that the shift from lack to ownership happens through a single interior move. The recognition that what you want is not something you have to earn access to, but something you are already in the process of receiving, not will receive, are receiving, present tense, active tense. The move from I am waiting for this to arrive, to this is already in motion toward me. Those two states feel completely different in the body. Waiting is passive and anxious, receiving is active and settled. And the body broadcasts the difference. The mechanism reads the difference and responds accordingly. The complete framework for making this shift, the specific sequence Collier documented for moving from the first mode to the second, is in the original work. 7 volumes, the link in the description. Free. Not a course about this. The original. Go there after this. Here is what this looks like in practice. Think about something you have been trying to manifest and have not been able to. Notice how you hold it right now. Not what you think about it, how you hold it. Is there tension in how you think about it? A quality of urgency or worry, a background hum of I need this to happen. That tension is the forcing. That is the signal broadcasting the absence. Now notice what it would feel like to hold the same desire without the tension. Not without caring, without the grip. The way you hold things that you know are coming. The way you feel about a check you know is in the mail. You want it, but the wanting is settled. There is no anxiety about whether it will arrive, because you know it will. That settled wanting is ownership. That is the broadcast that produces delivery. Collier wrote that the man who can hold his desire with the same settled certainty with which he holds a known future event has mastered the only thing that ever needed mastering. Not visualization technique, not affirmation practice, the interior state from which the desire is held. The irony that most people never understand is that releasing the grip on the how and when does not slow the delivery. It accelerates it, because the grip was never helping. The grip was the interference, the signal underneath the grip. I don't trust this to arrive without my forcing it, was the thing creating the delay. Remove the interference, change the signal. And the delivery that was always possible becomes the delivery that actually happens. The link in the description goes to the original. Collier's complete documentation of this principle across 7 volumes, the specific interior moves that produce genuine release rather than performed indifference, the cases he documented of people who made this shift and what changed in their experience afterward. Free. In the description, the harder you try to force your manifestation, the further it gets. Not because the universe is punishing effort, because forcing broadcasts the wrong signal, and the mechanism responds to the signal. Not the effort, not the intention, the signal. Change the signal from wanting what you don't have to receiving what is already yours, and the mechanism responds differently, as it always has. For everyone who has ever watched something arrive the moment they stopped chasing it, that was not coincidence. That was the signal changing, and the mechanism doing exactly what it always does, reflecting back what it receives. Collier documented this in 1926. The original is in the description. Free, waiting, here is something worth examining closely. Think about the last time something you wanted arrived easily, without struggle, without forcing. It might have been small, a conversation that resolved itself, an opportunity that appeared without you pursuing it, a problem that solved itself when you stopped trying to fix it. Notice the quality of that arrival, the ease of it, the way it came through a channel you did not engineer. And notice that you were not passive in that situation. You still acted, you still made decisions. But you were not gripping the outcome. You were not broadcasting anxiety about whether it would arrive. And because you were not broadcasting anxiety, the mechanism could deliver without interference. That ease, that specific quality of arriving without force, is not a special condition reserved for small things. It is the natural state of the mechanism when the broadcast is clean. Collier documented this as the baseline, not the exception. He wrote that things arrive easily when the interior state allows easy arrival, and they arrive with resistance when the interior state generates resistance. The resistance is not in the circumstances, it is in the broadcast underneath the effort. Now here is the part that most people find genuinely uncomfortable. The things that are hardest to let go of are almost always the things where the forcing is loudest. Not because those things are harder to manifest, because the anxiety attached to them is stronger. And anxiety is a broadcast. And the louder the broadcast of "I need this and I'm afraid I won't get it," the more the mechanism returns the experience of not getting it. This is why the areas of life where people try hardest are often the areas where they struggle most. Not because effort is wrong, because the effort is carrying anxiety. And the anxiety is the real signal. Strip the anxiety from the effort, keep the action, release the grip on the outcome, and the same area of life that felt like struggle begins to feel like movement. Not immediately always, but the direction changes, because the signal changed. Collier spent considerable time on a specific question that his early readers kept asking. They understood the principle intellectually. They could see that forcing produced interference, but they did not know how to stop forcing when the desire was intense and the absence was real. His answer was this: you do not stop forcing by trying to stop forcing. Trying to stop forcing is itself forcing. You stop forcing by changing what you are focused on. Specifically, by shifting focus from the absence of the thing to the reality of the principle. When your attention is on "I don't have this," the broadcast is lack. When your attention shifts to "the mechanism works," the broadcast changes. Not to certainty that this specific thing will arrive on this specific timeline. To trust that the mechanism responds to the signal, and that changing the signal changes what comes back. That is a smaller and more honest shift than trying to feel certain of a specific outcome. And it is the shift that actually changes the broadcast. Think about what this means for how you hold your current desires. You do not need to pretend you have what you want. You do not need to manufacture feelings of abundance or love or success that your circumstances do not yet reflect. You only need to shift from broadcasting "I don't have this, and I'm afraid I never will," to holding the desire with the settled quality of someone who understands the mechanism and trusts it to operate. Not forcing it, not chasing it, not measuring every day to see if it has arrived yet. Simply holding the desire, taking the actions that feel aligned with it, and releasing the grip on the how and when. That release, genuine release, not performed indifference, is the single most effective thing you can do for your manifestation. More effective than any technique, more effective than any practice. Because it removes the interference that was preventing delivery in the first place. Here is the closing thought Collier returned to repeatedly in his documentation of this principle. He said that the things most people are chasing are not running from them. They are simply waiting for the signal to change. They are present, available, capable of arriving, but blocked by the broadcast of the person pursuing them. The broadcast that says through its urgency and anxiety, and forcing "I don't believe this is coming to me." Change that broadcast. From chasing to receiving, from forcing to allowing, from "I don't have this" to "this is already in motion." and what was waiting becomes what arrives. Not because the circumstances changed, because the signal changed, and the mechanism, which has always been responding faithfully to the signal, responds to the new one the same way it responded to the old one. Faithfully, precisely, without judgment. The original documentation of this principle, the complete framework Collier assembled for making this shift in practice, is in the description. Free, in the link below.